Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we are obviously going to be taking a look at Red Dead Redemption running on a brand new update that was just released only hours ago for Xenia. For anybody who is not aware of it, Xenia is an emulator for the Xbox 360, and to show you just how big an update this is, let's take a look at how Red Dead Redemption was looking and running in the version of this emulator previous to this one. So as is very apparent in the gameplay being shown on screen right now, Red Dead Redemption has seen an absolutely insane upgrade to its visual rendering in game. Apparently this change wasn't anything major at all, and thanks to Triangle, one of the main developers of Xenia and the creator of the DirectX 12 branch itself, we now have a much more playable experience in Red Dead Redemption. And in this brand new build, you can very clearly see that I am practically being locked to 30 FPS or over at all times on my own current system, which consists of an i7-8700K clocked at 4.7 GHz, 16GB of DDR4 3200 MHz RAM, and as you can also see in my on-screen overlay, my GPU is an NVIDIA GTX 1080 Ti. So obviously nobody really cares too much about performance in cutscenes, so let's now quickly jump forward into some actual gameplay footage. In relation to performance in gameplay, in my experience, at least on my own system, I am pretty much seeing exactly the same thing that I was seeing in the introduction section of the game. The lowest FPS number I saw was around 20 or 21 frames per second, and generally in the open world sections of the game I'm locked to 30. You can however see that there are quite a few rendering bugs. Most of them in fact seem to be in relation to how foliage is rendered, and obviously since this game wasn't correctly rendering 3D before, the developers couldn't fix something that they didn't know existed in the first place. Hopefully that foliage rendering issue will be fixed very shortly. You can also see that in the cutscenes at least, and in some areas in the interiors of houses, this very strange square or rectangular graphical artifacting is currently occurring while playing the game. Outside of these rendering bugs, so the artifacting you're seeing right now and the foliage and trees not currently rendering properly at all, the game is pretty much rendered very well, and as we've already seen, performance is absolutely awesome. If you're not aware of it, Red Dead Redemption 1 at least is a 30 frames per second locked game on both the Xbox 360, Xbox One and PlayStation 3, all of those platforms being methods by which you can play this game. And if you're also not aware of it, and if you've not seen previous videos of mine, Red Dead Redemption is also in a semi-playable state on RPCS3, another emulator, but that one is for the PlayStation 3 platform. Since most of you guys are probably going to be very interested in the performance and rendering differences between Xenia and RPCS3, I'm going to be throwing in a short comparison a little bit later on in the video, so keep your eyes out for that. But for now, I want to continue through gameplay and see what performance and render quality is like once we enter the open world. When you consider the fact that this game wasn't even playable at all only one day ago, the build I previously showed where all of the graphics were completely broken was from January 12th, and this one you're currently seeing right now is from January 13th. It's really amazing to see that the game has gone from not playable at all and not booting into gameplay to its current state of render quality and performance right now. So as I previously pointed out, the vegetation and foliage is not rendering correctly. These weird black boxes are apparently something to do with level of detail rendering, basically meaning that the closer you get to an object, it's supposed to load in a higher quality mesh or texture on that select piece of foliage or terrain. Yet another bug that is currently present in Xenia in Red Dead Redemption is the fact that conversation dialogue currently isn't playing. At least in this build that I have tested, there is no conversation taking place right now between these two characters, and there also seems to be some kind of a bug generally just in relation to the audio of the game. For example, sometimes when you're running around, the audio of your footsteps will play and sometimes it won't. But as I already said, this game wasn't in any way kind of a playable form, so there's no way the developers could have fixed that issue before now. Hopefully, any and all of these issues will be fixed very, very soon, and having seen the progress in the last few months of this 360 emulator, I've absolutely no doubt that it will. So in relation to render quality and performance first, it is absolutely mind-blowing to see this game running at 30 frames per second on an emulator on the PC platform. As I mentioned previously in this video, RPCS3 is another emulator for the PlayStation 3 platform that also runs this game quite well. Jumping back in time a little bit, if you looked at any comparisons between the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 versions of this game, you may be aware of the fact that the PlayStation 3 version was quite problematic indeed, not only rendering at a much lower resolution of I believe 640p, but it also ran at a significantly lower frame rate pretty much all of the time in comparison to the Xbox 360 version of the game. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring in some gameplay footage from the very latest master version of RPCS3, and then we're going to be comparing performance and render quality to this, the brand new and latest version of Xenia. So for this comparative, I'm going to be running both games on both emulators at 720p and using the best possible performance settings for both. And yes, before you tell me, I am also aware of the fact that if I wanted to run this game at 4K or 5K resolution on my own system on RPCS3, and I would have pretty much zero performance loss by doing so. I'm doing this comparison at 720p, a resolution that both games can run, so it is a fair comparative, and to be honest, myself as a user, I would play a game at a lower resolution and a higher frame rate than a higher resolution and a lower one. So in this, the very latest master build of RPCS3, you can see that performance wise I'm generally anywhere between around 15 and 20 frames per second. You will however see that when entering much more taxing or demanding areas of the game that your frame rate can dip down to well under 10 frames per second. The lowest I saw in my gameplay for this testing was around 8. Let's now transition back over to Xenia, the Xbox 360 emulator, and see what the comparative performance is like there. So no, your eyes are not deceiving you. On Xenia, this Xbox 360 emulator, we are getting very, very close to a 30 frames per second lock in Red Dead Redemption. An absolutely crazy feat when you consider the state of this game only one day ago. If we follow the exact same path I just followed on RPCS3, you're going to see that in a similar circumstance, my performance is going to be absolutely awesome, almost staying perfectly locked to 30 frames per second in this very demanding area in the exact same place on the McFarlane Ranch. As I previously pointed out, there is currently a bug in the game that is stopping some of the missions from being triggered. For example, when you're talking to Bonnie McFarlane right here, it's supposed to trigger a mission where she gives you a tour of the ranch, and while it doesn't not trigger every single time, I just wanted to point out this bug to you guys in case you got your hopes up and expected the game to be perfectly emulated and perfectly playable. Now, while RPCS3, the PlayStation 3 emulator's version of this game, does have the advantage in the point that obviously it is rendered a lot better, and on that emulator you can upscale to 4K resolution and pretty much maintain exactly the same performance as you saw me running it at 720p. Also on RPCS3 it doesn't have any of the sound bugs that are currently present in Xenia, but there are many issues on that emulator in relation to this game. One, for example, is the fact that it is currently very unstable. In my capturing of footage just for this video, I crashed probably 4 to 5 times in RPCS3, whereas in the entirety of my testing for Xenia emulator, I didn't crash at all. So in relation to the two emulators, you would definitely have to say that Xenia at least has much better performance and stability, and RPCS3 has much better rendering and upscaling of graphics. Only time will tell which emulator is going to become the best place to play Red Dead Redemption on the PC platform, and I am most definitely looking forward to seeing more and more from both of these exciting emulators. So if you have any questions in respect to either Xenia or RPCS3, in the description of this video you will find links to both of their Discords. Also, down in the description you will find links to each of these emulators' respective Patreon funds in the event that you want to pledge, support, and help the development of each of these awesome emulators. Hopefully we'll see even more exciting progress from both of them, and as always the best place to see progress and updates from both of these emulators is right here at BSoD Gaming. So for the remainder of this video I'm just going to do a quick tour on horseback of the McFarlane Ranch so that you guys can see even further the render quality and performance of this game on this awesome emulator. Once again guys, cheers for checking out this video. Remember to like it if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and as always subscribe to the channel if you want to see all future videos from me.